All right, for this first class project, we're going to be doing a card. And I have included some sentiments that you might want to use that you can trace here. This is a PDF that I made for you using some different fonts that I have. We could do a hello fall, hello autumn, and in any of these we could also use for our next class project, which is the wreath. For this one, I'm going to use the word grateful. You can do thankful, fall, just choose any sentiment you want, or print something off on your own, or do your own brush lettering by hand. So those are all different options. We have the Strathmore watercolor cards, and I'm going to be using that to paint on. And I've got my light pad here so that I can trace my sentiment, and I'm just going to use that as my guide of where I'm going to place my design. I did a little bit of practice here on what I wanted to do. I have my main focal point be my pumpkin. I'm going to do some flowers around, and in my practice here I think that I made this a little bit too big, so I didn't really care for that. I did sketch out a little bit too, just to kind of give myself an idea of what I wanted to do. And like we talked about in my intro, is that a lot of times, especially for the wreath and the next project, planning it out is something that I like, because I do end up sometimes having things happen where I get it too big and I don't like the placement of things. Just gives you an idea so that you can get this nice and balanced. And for this, I recommend just doing one pumpkin because of the size. We only have a 5 by 7 inch space, using that as our main center point. And if you decide to do some flowers in front of this, like I did here, we have to plan this out ahead of time because watercolor is transparent. And this is why I feel like it's very important to plan this ahead, because I know I want to put a rose in front of this pumpkin. And as you notice here, this pumpkin doesn't go all the way down. I didn't finish this side of the pumpkin because I put the rose in first. And the reason we want to plan this out is if I want this in front, I don't want the pumpkin to show behind it. So I don't want to paint over the top of it. I want to paint the things that are going to be in the front first. So I'm choosing to paint this rose first so that I can add the pumpkin in behind it. And then because of watercolor's transparency, then I'm not seeing the other object through it. So that is something that we can practice here, just laying things out and knowing that if I planned ahead of time, I knew that I wanted a rose in front of that pumpkin for my design. All right, so in my practice here, I really like having the sentiment off to the side, not in the center, so I could choose like my left or my right side, but based on my design, I kind of wanted to do this lower left-hand corner. So I'm going to take my pencil and just trace this out really quickly. If you didn't want to do a pencil, you could just take your brush markers and just go right over the top and trace that. I'm just going to go ahead and just trace this out here. I'm actually just going to do my lettering at the very last part. And if you've taken any of my other classes before, I've explained that the reason I like to do this tracing method is because I am terrible at doing freehand brush lettering. What always happens to me is my letters end up all uneven, my spacing is off, I'll run out of space, or I won't fill it in enough. And this is a nice way to plan it out. I know on my computer I have a 7-inch card across the bottom. I want it to fill halfway. So when I'm planning this out and I print it off in a font that I like, I make it 3.5 inches so that it'll fill half of the front of the card. And then I can choose the size of my font. It's all spaced out properly. It is nice looking. It doesn't have too tall of letters, too short of letters, too long. The spacing is perfect. And this is the way that I can cheat at brush lettering, and it still looks great and hand lettered. It's just, I'm using this as my guide to help me. This particular font that I use is called Brilliant, and I bought it from Creative Fabrica, a website that you can buy lots of fonts. They had it on sale for $1 last month, so I'm not sure what the price is on it right now, but I have so many fonts that I've purchased, and this one's called Paprika, and honestly I don't remember what this font was. It was just something else that I had this fall. I don't remember what font I used for that. But if you don't like these fonts that I've chosen or these sentiments, go ahead and pick your own. I'm going to put my light pad away. And if you don't have a fancy LED light pad like I do, a sunny window is the poor man's light box. Get my light back on here. Alright, so I have my sentiment put down here in the bottom. And like we talked about, I want to plan out having my rose in front of my pumpkin. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with the rose. I want to make that in my peach color. I'm using my round size 8. And I want this to be kind of off to the side here. And in my practice, I made that rose just a little bit too big. So I'm going to not go out as many layers this time. So I'm just making my C-shaped strokes that intersect or overlap the previous rows, the previous inner row there. All right, so just add a little bit more in the center there. Now, one thing you will notice here, we talked about in the intro, is different paper types. This is not a cotton paper, it's an alpha cellulose based paper. So I feel like the water kind of sits on the top a little bit more. So you do have to be conscious of that when you're painting on this type of paper, that it doesn't absorb as much into your paper as a cotton paper. All right, now before I go ahead and do my pumpkin that's right next to that, I'm going to let that dry just a tiny bit because I don't want to have orange bleeding into my rose. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and start my stem though. I can do that part. I'm going to switch back over to my round 4 for this actually. I know in the practice I use my 8, but I'm making this a little bit smaller, so kind of thinking of where I want my pumpkin to be and then picking a point up here where the stem should go. Okay. I'm going to switch back over to my round 8 here. And like we talked about in the lesson on the pumpkins, I want to work fairly quickly here so that I don't end up with harsh lines in the center. I want to blend this through, and that's especially important in this type of paper because it doesn't absorb the water like the cotton paper. I want to make sure I just blend that down. And I did get a little bit of bleeding here from my brown. I didn't wait long enough for that. Alright, so like we talked about here in the planning part, here when I go to do this next layer, it's going to come and intersect with this rose. So I want to make sure that I pick an imaginary line that goes through there so I don't have my pumpkin going over the top of it. I'm just going to go around very carefully around my rose. My next layer is going to just stop here because it's not going to be showing. It would come out here behind there. And I'll just make those little curves back here for the back side of my pumpkin. Alright, I don't want to get too crazy and detailed on this because it is a greeting card. We can go a little bit more fussy with our art, with our wreath because it's going to be wall hanging. But generally my philosophy with cards is try to do them as quickly as possible and not spend 2 hours on a card because, I mean, you're just mailing it to someone and chances are they're not going to be hanging it up as a piece of artwork. It'll be a card that they might end up throwing away. They might keep it. I don't know, depending on what people decide to do with cards. So I don't want to spend an hour creating this masterpiece and then have it just be tossed in the trash. So I want to do this fairly quickly and not fuss over everything too much. I'm going to add a couple little, a peony flower here, and then maybe we'll do some little berries or something down here. Kind of do it slightly different than I did my practice here. I'm going to do a little peony flower here, so still using my round 8. I'm making that petal shape at the top and have some small strokes that come up. Okay. I'll have maybe like a branch here coming this way in my brown. So I've got that burnt umber I've been using. Get a little bit more of that. And if you want to switch over to a smaller brush for any of this, use whatever brushes you feel most confident with. I think on my practice here, I really liked I had those kind of oval berries coming over here. I'm going to switch over to my round 4 and get some of this plum color. All right, I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I add those little navy details on there. Just going to go over to my green really quickly here. And add some little branches and maybe just a tiny little leaf coming out from there. Just trying not to touch the purple so that you don't end up with green bleeding into it. I think I want to just add a little green leaf that's poking out right here too. My little peony flower. Okay. Alright, I want to add some navy in here just to give me a little bit of that color in here. So I'm going to do some little berries here along the bottom. Just going to tuck them in there. Do a couple little berries here. Okay, and let's see. I want to do one of those black-eyed Susan flowers. It would be really pretty right there too. I'm going to take that really dark brown that I mixed up. That was a little bit of the indigo with my burnt umber. And I don't want to start the top of it right here. I want it to be out because the petals are going to come back. So I want to just kind of think about where I'm placing that and start out up here. And maybe I'll have, since we have leaves coming out this way, I want to have it come across diagonally this way and just kind of have it come parallel with my greeting here. And I'm going to use the green. I'm going to turn my paper just a little bit here. I'm trying to just follow that same line that I have my sentiment at and have it coming across from this direction here. So simple, just simple leaf shapes. So we're not doing like maple leaves and things. It focuses on our flowers and our pumpkin. Okay. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and do my petals here. And I'm just going to keep using this round 4 to do that black-eyed Susan color. It's a little bit smaller in this than our practice, so. Again, as you get up to the top, make shorter and shorter petals. Just gonna blend that up a little bit. Some of those got a little bit too much water on one side. Okay. And I'm just going to fill in with some of these little filler flowers. I really like this peach color. I need a little bit more of that in there. And then we can add in a couple little more berries and maybe some wheat stalks here. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a few of these little peach flowers here that we practiced. I'll get my green. I'm just adding a few little tiny leaves off the sides of those. All right, I feel like I need a little bit more of that indigo color. I'm going to add a couple more little berries. I'll go over the top of my leaves here. And if those were not dry all the way yet, then you may want to wait a little bit because you will get some bleeding. Alright, and I'm just going to add a little bit of height here by adding in some little wheat branches here. So going with my yellow ochre here, just make a couple little wheat branches just coming right up here. All right, last little step is just to go over my my lettering. And I'm going to do some brown on here because I have this brown over here and I don't have any brown on this side, and I just want to balance that out a little bit. This is from the secondary set of these Tombow dual drip brush pens. It is number 977. And I'm just using the brush end of this. And like we talked about, if you don't want to do the brush pens, you could always just use a small, like a round size 1 brush, and use your same paint that you painted your leaves with. You do that same brown, or do any of the colors that we use today. All right, and if you have any leftover pencil lines, we can just use a kneaded eraser here and just kind of pick up. Whoops, that was not dry. Be careful. They're water-based, so they do carry just like watercolor. I should have waited for that to dry just a second, but it's okay. All right, there's our first project. It's a really lovely little card that you can send. I think this would make a really great card to send out any of the fall time, especially November before Thanksgiving here in the United States. So I really hope you like making this project, and if you want to keep following along, the next project we're doing is a floral wreath. All right, our second and our final class project here is this floral wreath, and I don't have an example yet on this, so we'll be painting it together. I have sketched out my design of kind of the idea of where I want things to be placed. I do want my focal point to be my pumpkin, so I've chosen the bottom center of that. So I'll have a big pumpkin, a smaller pumpkin next to it. I want some roses to be kind of in front of it, so I actually might tuck those down a little bit in my planning process here. I have a pumpkin that I have mirrored along the top here. And we did talk about in the practice lessons that if you didn't want to do pumpkins, you could do a stalk of wheat in the center, would look really pretty. Here I've kind of just drawn, I have some leaves filling in and following along. And basically what I did when I planned this out, and what I think is a good idea if you're wanting a nice balanced wreath, is if you put something on one side to try to mirror that on the opposite side. So maybe not exactly, I have 2 pumpkins down here and 1 pumpkin up here. I also kind of think if you're going to do 3 or more items that you do not do even numbered items, you try to do odd. So once you could have a pair of things, like here I have 2 of these Black-Eyed Susan flowers kind of mirrored across. But if I was going to do 3 or more, I would want to do 3 or 5, just because I feel like it looks more pleasing to the eye if you do it in odd numbers if you're above 3. So here I've got 3 peonies. Another design rule you can try to do is kind of like a triangle. So here I've done kind of a triangle. They're mirrored across, but then I also have one at the top point, so I have a triangle here. The same with the roses as well. I tried to do kind of mirroring across. Here I've got these seed pods, I'm mirrored across. These little berries mirrored across, berries across. So kind of just going across and trying to balance it out. But the main things we'll be focusing on here is we're going to be starting out by putting our bigger elements in, like the pumpkins, some of the bigger flowers first, and then we'll fill in with all these extra little leaves and seed pods and berries and things like that. So we'll start out with the pumpkins and the bigger flowers. All right, so also planning out, I chose a sentiment to put in the center of my wreath. I'm going with Hello Fall for mine. And in the class resources, I have provided my PDF here of many different sentiments that you can choose from, or come up with your own and put that in the center. I've got my light pad here. This is an 8x10 sheet of the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. It is 100% cotton paper. But use whatever paper you have on hand. I have my trusty roll of tape here I'm using as my circle. So I'm just going to find the center, just kind of eyeball it here. I'm going to draw a very, very light circle as my guide. All right, all done with that roll of tape. And I'm going to go ahead and trace my sentiment in here because I want to make sure that I don't paint over the top of any of that. And I'm going to go ahead with Hello Fall and try to center that up. It looks about right. Okay, set that off to the side. Alright, so like we talked about here, we're going to go ahead and just do some of our bigger elements in here first. I'm going to start out with a rose, just like we did with the card. I want a rose right here, and I have a pumpkin coming out from behind it, and then another pumpkin right next to it. I'm going to go ahead and just use my round size 8 to start. And this time I'm going to go ahead and go with kind of a plum colored rose for right there. I'm going to go just a little bit below where my line was. And then I'm going to go ahead and just put another one. I want to mirror the same colors. I'm just going to kind of go across here. And thinking of it like a triangle here, I'm just going to go kind of right about here. And just make another small rose over here. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do my pumpkins. a small pumpkin right here, so I'm just going to make a small little stem. And then a bigger pumpkin. It's kind of going to be kind of tucked here, so I don't want it to be directly across. Go a little bit below that one. And when we're talking about sketching out, this is just a sketch, kind of give me a rough idea of where I want things. It's not going to look exactly like this. When I paint things, it never is the way I draw it. I mean, I didn't draw out a rose, I just drew some squiggly lines, and I mean, you can't even really tell what some of those objects are. So I'm just using this as a guide of where I wanted to place things. Okay, so I'm going to go in, I'm going to get a little bit more of my quinacridone gold here. Go with a little bit of a taller pumpkin here. And just like we did in the card, I am going around my flower here and going like an imaginary line through it. Again, if you just want to add or leave a tiny little thin little area of white just along the edge of that pumpkin there, just to kind of define those little segments a little bit more. I'm just going to add those little teeny crescent shapes up here for the back side. Up a little bit more. Okay. So I want to do a different color pumpkin for this one right here. I'm going to switch over to my round 4 because it's going to be quite a bit smaller and I want to be able to get in that area. I'm going to go ahead and do my indigo. And this one's going to be a pretty short pumpkin. And it's a little bit tucked behind this other pumpkin, so it's not going to be shown completely. Alright, so I'm going to fade that. I'm just going to blend that color over. I'm just going right up to the edge of that orange pumpkin. Do my back side. Alright, that looks really cute. Now we can go back in after we've added some of our bigger elements here and fill in some little leaves and things like that. I just dripped a little bit of water on my paper by accident. Alright, so I want to add another pumpkin up here. And I'm just going to go ahead and add another orange pumpkin, another little smaller one. So this one's my main focal point, and I'll probably make a pumpkin similar in size to this one here. And I'm going to go up a little bit above my line here because I want the pumpkin to be right along the top edge here. Go back into that gold color. just making my oval. I can rinse, blot, and blend that over. Just give myself a little bit of shadow. Alright, some of the other big flowers I want to add in here are maybe some of those peony type flowers. I'm going to switch back over to my round 8. I'm going to do one in the peach color. I'll put one up here. I'm just going to go ahead and take my eraser really quickly and just erase off some of this pencil, because when we do that peach flower over the top, it might show through a tiny bit. So I'm just going to erase part of that back. Alright, so I'm going to put a peony flower right about here. And this might look a little strange as we're going, but I'm remembering that I planned this out, and I know I'm going to fill in with other stuff, so if it looks odd as we're going, we'll all get it to come back together in the end. Alright, so I'm going to do kind of like a triangle here. I'm going to have one here and one here. Alright, and then the other big flower we can do is that Black-Eyed Susan. So I want to add a few of those in here. I'm going to mix just a tiny bit more of that really dark brown. Alright, I'm going to flip my paper because I want this one to be coming this direction. I'm going to make my little gumdrop. And then I'm going to mirror that going across here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to my round 8. I'm flipping this upside down. And I get some of that gold color. And then the longest petals along the bottom, and getting shorter as you go out and around to the top. I did kind of run into my peach flower here, but I can always just go back over that with a leaf or something to hide that. This one up here. All right, one of the other flowers that we practiced was those globe flowers, the crispidias, and I want to add a couple of those in here as well. When we practiced that, I did them kind of large. They were almost an inch in width, and I don't really like them quite that big. Reality, they're pretty small, actually. They're more, probably about a half an inch. Most of the time you see them in people's boutonnieres for wedding flowers. So let's see, I I want to go ahead and put one of them over here. So I'm just going to make a yellow circle for right now, and then we can come back and add the little details over that. And then I'll put one coming out over here, so that's mirrored across this side. And then if I want to complete my little triangle, maybe I will stick one over here. It can be more coming in toward the middle. And I feel like I need a little bit more of this plum color in there. I know I can do some of the small little filler flowers in that, but I want to do maybe we'll do some really small of these peony flowers. I kind of have in my picture, I put one about here. So I could do a larger one here and then maybe a couple smaller ones mirrored across over here. Just do a little bunch of them right here. Okay. All right, there's a lot of plum in there now. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and start putting some of my filler elements in here now. I'm going to switch over to my round 4, and I'm going to add in some of my leaves. I'm going to add in some of these green leaves to start. Get some of that color in here. So I'm using that undersea green again. And I'm going to have a big leaf branch maybe coming this way, coming out from the edge. Okay, and I want to mirror that, so I'm going to go over here, and I'll have that coming from this direction. Okay. I'm going to bring some of that indigo color in here as well, so I'm going to do some of those leaves in indigo. Maybe some smaller little branches of leaves coming. Let's do some really small ones. And the indigo, you can kind of go over top of some other things because it's so dark that it's fine. We don't have to worry about a peach color in front of an orange, so that indigo can kind of go over top of some other ones. You'll kind of come up here. I can add in some little leaves coming this way as well. Just mirroring that from the bottom. And I think I'm going to complete my little triangle here and put some over here. It's just kind of coming out from those little peonies I put in there. So we have a nice little triangle of those indigo leaves. All right, I want to add in a few more little filler berries and things like that. Let's see, in my plan, I kind of had some more leaves coming out this way. I think we'll do some brown leaves for this next set. Get some of that burnt umber. We have a little bit coming this way. And here I've got a flower here that I placed already, so I'm just going to have that come right up to the edge and go around. That would be going behind it. All right, and add some more brown ones up here as well. And I'll have a third set right here. I'm going to flip my paper around. Go this way. All right, we're really starting to get filled in here now. We're basically starting with the biggest things first, adding in our medium-sized leaves and branches, and then our final step will be filling in with the smaller leaves and berries and some of our little seed pods that we can add in. I feel like I need a bunch more green in here, and I do want to add just some individual leaves along some of these flowers here. So I'm going to go ahead and just add in some smaller single green leaves here and there. Maybe at the base of some of our peonies, around some of our roses here. It's really about looking at your color balance and seeing, are you really heavy on a certain color? So right now, as I'm filling this in, I have an awful lot of this plum color in here. It's pretty heavy here and here. There's a lot of the orange. So when I'm adding in some of my filler areas, I know that I want to add a little bit more indigo for some berries. I'll add some more peach with some smaller flowers, just to balance this out and get myself, so it's not too heavy in one certain color. My globe flowers are pretty dry now, and I'm going to go ahead and just add my little details over the top, and just going to add some little dabs of the same yellow ochre over the top of that just to give those some texture. And then I can add a little stem connecting it into the wreath. So I'm just going to use that same burnt umber and just kind of have that stem going in toward the wreath. All right, we're just going to keep going ahead and filling in some of our little elements here. Now I'm going to move on to the little berries and fillers. I want to add some more of this peach color, so I'm going to add in some more of those little peach flowers. I'm just going to get some of my pencil out of there. All right, so we can add in some small little peach flowers here and there. And if you just want to add one or two here or there, that just to add a little extra. And a little peach down here. Then we can add in, I want to add a little more indigo, so I'm going to put some berries in here. And I'll just do a little triangle. I have a lot of weight on this side because I have a lot of things and there's still quite a bit of empty space up here, so I don't want to add too much more down here. little more green here. And just making some tiny little stems, maybe a little leaf coming off the side of that berry there. Okay, and I need to add in some stems and leaves for my little peach flowers that I added in there. So okay, and I still have some little areas here. This is kind of sparse. I need something more here. All right, I have those. I have some plum here and here. I think I want to complete my little triangle, and I'm going to add a little bit of plum color over here with those little oval shaped kind of berries. In my original sketch I put them down here, but I changed that up by adding a little bit more of that over here. So I'll just put some small little ones over here. And I'm going to mirror that with them just coming over here because I have a little bit of a blank space kind of right in here. Use that burnt umber to connect those in with the little branches. Maybe a little brown leaf coming off of that too. And I'll come back after that's a little more dry and I'll add those little navy details on there. All right, so I want to add in some of those little wheat stalks now. I have that yellow ochre I can use to make that. And this is a nice little filler element. Here I got some blank space in here. I'm going to add in some little wheat pieces. Seems to be a little, oh, I forgot to add my leaves and branches in there, so I'm going to kind of just mirror across here. And I'll just kind of complete a triangle here a little bit. I'll go downward like this maybe. I actually want to add a little bit more. I'm just going to keep adding some more wheat along here, along the bottom. We'll add, let's see, I think right about there would look good. Nice little fill in there. Alright, notice that I forgot to put some stems and leaves along there. Go back with that green. That'll fill that little gap in for me. And just add some little leaves to fill that in. I still have a little bit of a blank space right there. I feel like maybe just a small little plum flower would look good right there. Just add a couple little flowers just to fill that in. Okay, I'm going to go back to my indigo. I'm just going to add those little dot lines on my little ovally berry colored bits. Okay, I am pretty satisfied with all of my flowers here. If you are making yours and you notice you have an area that maybe has a lot of white area and you want to add some more things in, go back to the lesson where we did all those little filler elements. We have, oh, I have some little seed pods I could put in there too to fill in some with that brown. That would look really good. All right, I got my burnt umber here. I feel like, okay, in my sketch I put one about here and here. That would actually work out really well. So I'm going to put couple in here just to add a little more brown in because I have a lot of my other colors. And I'm making that oval and just putting those little dots inside of it. There, I had a little bit of a blank area there that fit really perfectly in there. All right, and you could add some more berries in places if you have too much of a gap. I could add a little bit more in here, I guess. That looks a little bare. We'll add a little bit. Some of these indigo colored berries in there. Those are nice little filler elements. And just kind of take a look, you know, mull it over, think, do I have too much of a certain color in there that I need to balance it out with a darker color or a lighter color to fill in some of the gaps? It's really about just finding a good balance and making sure it's even and not too heavy in certain areas. So if you have a lot of large elements and then you're putting all of them on one side of your wreath, it's going to look really, really heavy in that area. So we want to balance that out by having these heavy elements of these pumpkins. I have two down here and I balance it out by going across the wreath on the opposite side and adding a pumpkin over there. So that's something to think about when you are designing your wreath. All right, the last step for me to do is to add in my lettering. I've got that all penciled out and I need to decide what color I want to do here. I don't really seem to have a color in these brush pens that I really, really love. I really wish I had an indigo color. I'm going to try a few of these colors out here and see what I have. Let's see what this green looks like. All right, this could be a good option. This green from the secondary set is 177. If there's a really dark purple, that would work really well. That's number 679. Let's see what that yellow looks like. The yellow would be okay. I think that's a little too bright. Same goes for that orange. I think I'm going to go ahead and use that dark purple color. You know what? Alright, I've gone ahead and I picked out a color from my secondary set here. This was the Dual Brush Pens secondary palette. This is number 158. And I'm going to use this one and the plum color. So I'll do the hello in the green and the the plum color, the number 679 for the word fall. We'll see how this turns out. And I'm just erasing my last little bit of pencil I have there. All right, this is really pretty project. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I hope you had fun painting along with me, and thank you for taking my class.